So welcome to the HackHunterdon radio show number 17. I'm your host, Jim Minadio, and I'm the president of ZeroSurge, a manufacturer of power quality filters that are used for surge protecting sensitive electronics. With ZeroSurge, you have peace of mind that your electronics are kept safe. So today's guests are from Lambertville, based company called ResponseWorks. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan is the president, and Jennifer is a EAP crisis coordinator.
That's correct.
For the company. And as they write on their website, when times get tough, we all need a helping hand, from crisis management services to employee assistance programs to higher education services. ResponseWorks has the experience you need to have a powerful impact. Whether creating a comprehensive disaster management plan or helping an individual employee, ResponseWorks is skillful, flexible, and compassionate. And as always, I end the show with some historical perspective. So today I did some research into the history of employee assistance programs, confirmed it a little bit with Dan and Jennifer earlier. So, and we'll talk about that at the end. And so welcome.
Thank you.
So you get to see some of the little, how the sausage is made here, right? We had some issues with the video, which we hopefully fixed. And so let's get started. Let's just get right into it. So, and then I guess halfway through we'll do some announcements, because I almost forgot we should talk about when the next meetup is for our HackHunterdon. So I can tell you guys about it too. So let's just start off. So we're going to... Why don't we say, like, what is an employee assistance program? So, Dan, you could take it.
Actually,
Jennifer's going to take the first one? Okay.
So employee assistance programs are groups of support services that companies and organizations utilize and to help their employees, basically. So it could be anywhere from, like, short-term mental health, consultations with supervisors, it could be legal referrals, it could be dependent care, and it's really a program for not only the employee, but it also benefits the employee's immediate family as well.
Okay, so so it could be like, I need to find daycare. You may run a program for that, or I'm having a problem with my elderly mother. I need to figure out how, because for companies, they need to have their employees focused on their job. So if they're worrying about these home issues, they can't concentrate at work. So it pays for, like, so what level of employer do you guys deal with then? So obviously the biggest companies are your bigger customers, but how far down on the size of companies do you guys deal with?
Right. We've had employers with as few as 10 employees to start with, and we don't really have a minimum size, but that's the smallest we've had to date. So from 10 up to 300 up to a couple of thousand has been in our book of business. Yeah.
So how many people do you have working for you then?
So it's just the two of us. We have a very part-time person in Michigan, and the reason is that we use, which a lot of EAPs do, we contract with mental health professionals around the country, and that's part of what Jennifer does. And it's a independent contractor relationship, but we have to screen them.
There's a vetting process, There's a process, and then they would join our network, and then we literally get calls from all over the United States, the world, sometimes depending on what the issue is, and then my job would be to find somebody in their area that suits their needs, and they could be in our network, or I may have to recruit and find somebody that, and we utilize different websites and make sure that everybody's certified and everybody has to be.
So you guys are facilitating the connection between the companies, like their HR departments, and then so do you guys do also, like, as a small business ourselves? We only have like 7 employees, so for us it's more we use Paycheck, ADP is who we use right now, and they offer kind of HR services like this. So is that something that I guess you wouldn't necessarily work with the bigger, like, payroll companies, right? You're working more directly with the actual employers.
We're working directly with the employers.
And most of the employees, actually, because 80% of our referrals are self-referrals. So it's the employees that know. We do have the referrals that are mandatory through, human resources, but the majority are they take it upon themselves to call.
Do you guys do also, like, local governments and stuff too? Like their program for them, or is it just businesses?
Right. We don't currently. We have a quasi-government agency that we provide service for, but all the others are private companies or organizations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you find these companies? They just find you?
It's funny because we're in an effort now of kind of doing some development. I've run the company for 21 years and have never, believe it or not, had a real full-blown development program. Customers have found us either through word of mouth, or we are on some registries on the internet, which has helped us, listed by state. So if anyone's looking for a resource in New Jersey, we're one of the few EAPs listed on that directory. So we have got a number of calls related to that. But
is there certain credentials you have to have then to be able to be an EAP provider? Is there some kind of state or federal or?
Right. So we have to make sure that the people who are providing direct service are licensed mental health professionals. That's part of our vetting process.
And it's current. We check everything is current. Yeah.
But we are registered with the state of New Jersey as
Okay. Yeah. And okay. So how did you get into this business? You said 20 years ago. So this is before the internet then.
It was just on the cusp. I wouldn't have been able to start the program without access to the internet, because that's how we developed the contacts, nationwide, because our first customer needed nationwide coverage. And I couldn't have done it without the internet and without the early stages of cell phones. I mean, they were the big ones.
Yeah.
They had to carry around with a huge battery.
The bricks.
Attached to it, exactly.
So how did you get your first customer?
So I used to work for a similar company, a nationwide company. It was a nonprofit that was spun off to a for-profit, and I was an account manager for them. And they had some major customers, and I covered certain regions of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And I got married and had a child, and that 2-hour commute each way to New York, 2-hour plus commute every day, plus a lot of travel, it was not going to work. So initially was trying to do remote working or just working from home, but the employer didn't want to go along with that. So actually one of customers that we were working with said to me, "How hard would it be for you to do this on your own?" I said, "I know how to do it. I can do it. It's just a matter of setting all the pieces in place." And so I did, and they came along, and they were my first customer. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that's nice. So you had a customer who recognized they didn't want to lose you if you were going to go off and do something else.
Right.
That's nice.
So I was very fortunate that way, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I think of all the people I've interviewed so far, so this is our 17th show, which is 17, well, it's less than 17 people because we have a couple of repeats already. But, most of the people get started. That's rare that I've found that, that people get started because they had a built-in customer that kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
So then how did you get your second customer?
So,
So the first one was easy. It was handed to you. So how did you get the second one?
Right.
I'm only doing this as an exercise because, like I said, the show is about innovation and kind of like this. The beginning is always like, how did you get to where you were, and what little things that you did along the way, maybe it helps somebody else who's, okay, I got the first customer.
Right.
Now how do I get the second one? Because the first one was handed to me.
Right. The second customer actually was in a similar industry, transportation, and it was word of mouth between the two.
Okay.
So I kind of did a live audition with them, a training session related to trauma, and they came and watched and said, "Would you work with us too?" And I, of course, said sure.
Yeah.
And that one training contract developed then into an employee assistance contract, which grew beyond that. So, yeah,
And was Jennifer with you from the beginning, or?
No. Jennifer's been with almost 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
2+ years, yeah. So I've had a few other part-time employees who've gone on to other things, bigger and better things. Yeah.
So you're able to do it, with other help, and then doing the vetting process and things like that. But now Jennifer's been here. It's been 3 years, so it's like your guys are growing now.
Yes, yeah. It's much better to have Jennifer focused on that, and she's also helping out with the development process that we're in now. So
And some trauma when there's some. You want to talk about that, the trauma aspect?
So when something bad happens in the workplace, of course, our customers will look to us to help support their employees, and in some instances their customers as well, if it impacts their customers.
And to go
So you're
on
talking
site.
trauma, meaning like a flood to the building, or
Flood to the building, violence in the workplace, whether it's suicide, death in
death.
the workplace,
Yeah.
sudden death in the workplace, where it creates that kind of upset.
Or a major
in the
accident
workplace.
or something.
Correct,
Right,
yes.
absolutely, or a major accident for one of our aviation customers.
Oh.
And Jennifer's key in getting the word out to our immediate closest by
In the
mental health
area
professionals.
to get somebody on site fast because it's time sensitive. So they rely on us to make sure that we have somebody there no matter where it is.
so you're just kind of, it's almost like you're like a firefighter just waiting for the emergency call.
Any call at any
and so
time.
you could get a call on your phone at 2 a.m. and
At any time, yeah.
Yeah.
and guess what? I need
Yeah.
you to. And so you're on the phone. So what's your first step then is just to assess what the problem is. I take it, right?
Yeah.
You know, figure out how extensive, what kind of
Right.
people you have your checklist. Okay, I'm
Right.
going to need
Right.
counselors.
Who's in the area?
Who's already there? Is the Red Cross involved? Police?
Depending on the magnitude of the situation, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so have you had, without getting into details, we're talking stuff that we've heard in the news, maybe that, like level
Yes.
of, okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
aviation
I don't know.
customers have accidents, and
Okay.
we've responded to
Oh, wow. So,
one accident in particular, which was an international one. So we ended up providing, and this goes to, we're small, but we have really good partnerships with really good people. So we were able, and we're still providing services in 23 countries after the aftermath of this particular aviation disaster.
oh, so one of the big ones in
One of
the,
the big ones, yeah.
oh, wow. So do you get the call right away, like as soon as it happens, or do you get a call like after you've seen it in the news kind of thing?
Right.
Like how fast does that, where does the management of this?
The way news
'cause obviously it's a big company, right? So
The way
they-
news is these
yeah.
days, it's always it's always on the news first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
always on the news first. Yeah.
And then so you're there, not.
In fact, in one I was doing,
Yeah.
a quick story.
Yeah, no, that's what you're here. Tell stories.
I was doing a training for this one customer, and I saw on the news that another customer had an accident. So the training hadn't started yet, so I just stepped out of the room and I called up their emergency response manager,
Yeah.
and I said, I see you guys had an accident. And they said, we did? They didn't even know yet.
Oh,
They didn't
wow.
even know it. 'Cause, that's how fast.
Yeah,
news
nowadays,
is. But
yeah.
And it puts such a twist on everything with the news and the internet where families and other people hear things that are happening before it can even,
Yeah.
their own company can find out. So it changes everything. The innovation of that changes the magnitude of the trauma
Right.
for lots of other people in many ways.
Oh, so they can see it before they even find out what even is happening, and
Right.
so they can expect the worst, and
Right.
that maybe it wasn't as bad, or like if it's like a shooting at a store or something,
Exactly.
you're going to
Right.
think the worst, and and then so that's, I can see that. I
And
guess-
initially, that period of not knowing or wondering is usually the most stressful time
Yeah.
for the families, but also for people who work or are trying to get the information for them as well. So those early hours of a crisis are key, but also the most challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. So then like you said, you're still providing support for even the accident. How long ago was that? Like
2015.
so 4 years later, you're
4 years
still
later, we're still providing
still getting
support
phone calls.
services.
You're still getting people connected to health services, I imagine,
Yeah.
mainly.
Less than the first couple of years, but
Right.
still
But the
there.
thing is, it still lingers
Yeah,
years
exactly.
later. And do you get like new cases even 4 years later, or is it just lingering old cases that are just still?
Right.
I'm just curious
Mostly-
as far as how far trauma can affect somebody
Right,
later,
right.
where they really ask for help.
We had, I think the latest someone made an initial contact was a year and a half after it
Okay.
happened. But we're working with people for going on 4 years in a couple of instances. So it's been, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I just so a little bit of my background. Like my sister's a psychiatrist at University of Maryland Hospital and does research. So
Okay.
some of the stuff she was involved with, they tried to create a center after one of the many mass shootings. They have some kind of center down at University of Maryland that looks into causes and things like that. They still don't have much tools to be able to do this because of the way the NRA blocks a lot of that data from being collected.
Right.
Because they don't want to know that really you give somebody a gun, stuff can happen.
Yeah.
And so I know a lot about, I don't know a lot about it, but I'm aware of some of this stuff. And we've used, my wife worked for a large company, so they had a EAP, and I'm sure we've used it over the years for grandparents issues, daycare issues, all those sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And it is very useful.
Yeah. It's kind of a one-stop shop, so that we kind of the clearinghouse, people have an issue or problem related. They might even think it's related to work, but they have a resource for support there, and then we try to steer them in the right direction.
And it benefits both the employees and the employer equally, because if you have somebody who can't pay attention, or absenteeism, or injuries, so it's like you're supporting them the best you can, knowing life is challenging, but you still have to work.
Right.
So it's for both.
Yeah, so how do you then say you have an employer set up, how often do you help with them to advertise that your services even exist? Because I think some people, especially in the larger companies, they're bombarded. I know from my own experience through my wife, she had an intranet kind of page that had, as soon as you log in, but she's there to look at, specific meeting stuff, but that's there's so many things that are going on. How do you help to let the people know that, hey, that we're over here?
Right. It's definitely an ongoing struggle or process. And each company is different. They've got their own style, their own culture for how they disseminate that. Most have the internet access with us, a link to us.
There's a
and
quarterly
the 800
news.
number. We distribute a quarterly newsletter to try to keep it fresh.
To all the employees.
Yeah. But we do have to rely on the customer to actually distribute it electronically.
Yeah.
We give it to HR, and then we rely on them to distribute it.
To share.
But some of our customers also have benefit fairs, which we find really useful, because then the face of the company is really helpful. So we love when they have those types of things, because we're there in person, we can talk about it, we have things they give out to people, so that the number's kind of in front of them.
Encouraged, and it's encouraged by the employer, so it's nice to have the support.
Okay, we'll get to take our timing is a little off today, but that's all right. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll get right back at it. So,
oh, folks, you know what that music is? That's the time for modern design. This blue thing is a really new trend. A lot of the designers are trying to introduce blue as a new cabinet color. This is topical for you guys. This is really topical. And the mother said, well, I'd like her room to be gray. And the little girl said, Mom, gray is the color of depression. Hi, this is Rich Scuderi of Modern Design. We're on live every Wednesday from 2 to 3, and you're listening on WHCR DB.
You're listening to WHCR DB, HunterdonChamberRadio.com. Brought to you by the Hunterdon County Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business.
Did you know that 1 in 5 people are affected by mental illness? NAMI Hunterdon is the locally affiliate for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are all volunteers, and all our programs are free of charge. We offer Family to Family, a 12-week course for families that have an adult member with a mental illness. Another popular program is In Our Own Voice, where individuals who are living with mental illness discuss their challenges and their progress in overcoming those challenges. Another course we offer is Basics, a 6-week course for families with a child or an adolescent who has experienced mental illness. We also have a monthly support group for families on the third Thursday of every month. Please call NAMI Hunterdon at 908-284-0500 for more information about any of our programs or to join. NAMI Hunterdon, the voice for mental health in Hunterdon County.
When it matters most, our award-winning team of emergency physicians and nurses provides sophisticated care 24 hours a day. Superior emergency care at a moment's notice. Hunterdon Healthcare, your full circle of care.
all right, we're back here. Jim and Audio here with Dan and Jennifer from ResponseWorks. And so to get back into it, let's see. So we were make sure we cover everything here. So the impact on technology. So I was kind of my next question was going to be leading to, you talk about the newsletter. Have you guys gone into other kinds of medium, like having a short video or having, through your partners, probably like having, a psychologist give like a little, if you're feeling, this, you should call us, or this is why you should call us, or, if you need help with your grandparents, this is, I think because more people are less likely to read, than to watch a video or something like that.
I guess we are a little late to the rodeo in that sense, because we're just looking at those issues right now. Actually, we were in a meeting earlier today, actually looking at social media aspects of it. And I know one of the conversations through the chamber were related to video as well. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, everything becomes low tech so fast. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, that once you feel you're current, and then a year or two later you realize, oh, I'm behind it again, kind of thing. So, I mean, when I started the business, it really was. It's crucial to have access to the internet, and now that's like just so. Yeah,
it's like
so
having access to paper.
Exactly. And certain aspects of technology have impacted the service. Even just going back to that major aviation disaster, some communication was done from families through WhatsApp instead of over the telephone. Oh, wow. So they would reach out through WhatsApp, and
because that's secure.
It's secure, right? And then if they wanted to talk in person, then they say, "Call me at such and such a time." So. We can keep up with those kinds of things, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, there's telecounseling.
Right, and the ways of delivering the service have changed somewhat, so more people are absolutely open to talking on the telephone with a counselor as opposed to
not being in person
in an office, which we provide that. That's kind of actually an easy thing to do.
Well, and it's more convenient for people too, and they don't feel the stigma of having to go to the office. You walk out. You have to worry about who's in the waiting room.
Because it's hard enough to make the call initially for people. Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot to reach out, and so we want to make it as comfortable as we can and easy for them.
Right.
Yeah, and it just seems like too with all the, this is like a mental health month, right? Is October, so it's like, kind of appropriate that you guys are here. But I was thinking that I have a former coworker that's had some issues with depression things, and he's reached out through social media, but it's like, how do you then transition the help that person needs? So it's like, I can imagine, on the employer side, like if one of my employees is, coming to work and there's something, it's like, how do you train the supervisors to say, hey, call this number, instead of, because sometimes you feel like, oh, well, I just need to give them a hug or something, like, or there's people that think that, I would imagine, as supervisors, like, oh, I can just talk it out, or I know their kids, I know their situation. But the one thing I learned as an employer, I'm a relatively new employer, about 6 years running this business. So one thing I was taught by ADP was like, as an employer, you're not supposed to get emotionally involved with your employees' lives, right?
Right.
That's what your that's what you guys do.
There's a fine line.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's more like, here, I recognize you have an issue. Here's how you
acknowledging it. And that's what you acknowledge it.
One of the things that we found helpful in that regard is both working closely with human resources, but also providing separate training for managers and supervisors just related to how to use the program. Because it's really there to support their efforts as well, and to kind of take them out of the hot seat. So if you can present it as a resource for them as an employee, but also as a manager. And every manager's got their own style, and so we try to say, we're not going to change your management style, but we can help you to know what to say, when to say it.
And notice red flags, or when something, because when you're you have a group of people that are looking up to you, it's kind of nice to have some tools.
And if people have a good relationship with their manager and they share certain stuff, that's fine, but the manager still has a resource. Hey, maybe you want to consider giving ResponseWorks a call. Here's their number. Do you remember when they came here to the health fair?
Right.
That sort of thing. Some of our customers do have the mandatory referrals as well, so that if the normal kind of
so built into their operating rules. Basically, if an employee
if they're managing a
says, "I'm not feeling good,"
Mm-hmm.
and you notice that they're,
Or a
it's not just a
life-threatening
physical,
situation or something of that magnitude, yes, definitely.
like an abusive spouse or something like that, and you see physical, then automatically you have to call for help. Yeah, sort of like with teachers and kids at school, right?
Right, absolutely. Plus, if there's a performance issue, if someone's not doing well in their job, then that can become a part of that program, that they can make sure the person contacts the EAP as well. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's see. So one of the things we want to talk about is, you mentioned in your list to me, was it psychological first aid?
Right.
So is that is there like a specific kind of kit you have for managers for that? Like, just like I have my bandages, and I mean, is there really like something that people can grab a hold of? Like,
there absolutely is, and it, as the name implies, it's first aid that anybody can. You don't have to be a mental health professional to be helpful to people who are in a crisis, and that's really what it's tailored toward. When people are in an emotional crisis, how do you communicate with them? What's important? And
how to respond.
Yeah, so we have a training that's focused on how do you help someone when they're in a crisis. So some of our customers actually want that training in the transportation industry, so we provide that for them and teach their employees how to intervene in a very helpful way with people. And I was on the, through LinkedIn, actually, I connected with somebody I had who works at a government agency, the Safety Board. And years ago, I'd done a training with him basically on psychological first aid. And he had, about a week later, called me up all excited because he said, this stuff really works. He said, I have a friend who was in a crisis, and I was on the West Coast, and they called me in the middle of the night. And I just listened and talked her through it, and wasn't providing any advice, just listening, and found that it was very...
So they should offer helped. That. I mean, like I've taken CPR classes, I've taken child raising classes. Why isn't that just like that should be a class?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you have it as a class, but it's amazing that we don't offer it to kids even in high school, to just some basic, like, step 1 through 5, and then step 6 is call 911.
Right.
So it's if you can get through the first 5 and everybody's happy, then you're good. But if you still need more help, then 911 or whatever.
And the training is useful for everyday instances. I had an instance, I was walking through town with two of my children, and a lady came over the curb and fell off her bike, and it was like and I knew not to move her, and I knew what to do, and it's because of the going through the trainings and doing it. Wow. And my kids were like, Mom, how did you know all that? They were just like... And then the lady actually reached out to me to thank me through her friend, took my phone number. She had her pelvis was broken. Like was, and when the EMT got there, they're like, ma'am, you did and I just, and it was like react, and it was just normal. Like without the training, I probably would have freaked out because I didn't have those tools. So
very helpful.
It's really, I have a couple stories where I've been in some crisis situations that I now know how to handle. So it's really useful. Like,
do you train then people to how to deal with customers? Like, say you're in a service industry, like say the transportation is obviously you're dealing with a lot of customers if you're moving people around. Right. Like, do you have specific programs for how to deal with? Like, for me, I wouldn't need it because we were a manufacturer. So we deal with them over the phone. Maybe. I mean, I guess we probably could use them, and we deal with customers directly, but not in a personal, like in person, like we are. Right. So do you have training tools for that too, or?
So many people who go through our training, you can see the light bulb go off and say, oh, I can use these skills every day with irate customers. Because that's part of the training. How do you deal with someone who's extremely angry and you start to feel they might lose control? That's one of the things.
And your mannerisms and your response is either going to escalate it or you can...
diffuse it. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so that's another value that you add as a company to these.
And when we do like a refresher training, it's just really interesting to hear people come back and say, I use these skills. I never thought I'd use them in this situation. They start talking about it, maybe a personal situation that they faced, a personal crisis. The tools
I think that's important too. Like you use the word refresher. Like it's not something you just learn and then you know how to do. It should be,
It's
ongoing
continual.
training.
It is.
And it's additive training too. As you get better at it, then you can start doing higher levels of.
And things change and emerge, and so we like to keep up and refresh. Because if you don't use the skills for a while.
Yeah. So how do you guys deal with the legal issues? Like you have HIPAA laws, obviously, is a big one that affects you guys.
Right. Absolutely.
How do you deal with that for security? The data, because obviously you have a lot of company data. You have several different companies' data.
Right.
How do you deal? Do you
A
have
lot of personal information.
Yeah. Do you have to? Do you hire outside help for that? And
so we had to hire outside help to help us with meeting the requirements of HIPAA, because you're right. I mean, EAP records are considered medical records. So electronically, especially, we had to be up to speed with that. So we had a consultant come in to help us with that and work through what products on the market are HIPAA and make sure that we were using them. Absolutely, make sure we were in compliance that way. Because we have to store data. We have to keep records of what we've done in interventions, especially if there's a child abuse or suspected kind of thing, we're obligated to contact authorities as well. So we have to have all that documented, of course.
And you have to have that knowledge too, right? To know to contact and things like that. And then know what you can hand over and what you can't hand over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And does it vary? It varies. And then you're dealing with other countries too. So since you're in the U.S., if something happens in England, how do what is the HIPAA only is for the U.S., right?
Right.
So
and
now you got to deal. Oh, then they have their own
privacy laws, but we have resources there who know they're in country.
That adhere to the privacy laws.
Right. They're in country.
So you keep the data over there, then, and then you don't handle it here,
right,
so to speak. So it's not.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a lot to worry about before you even talk to people.
Before you even talk to people, yeah.
Wow. So that's a big difference from 20 years ago when you didn't have. You just had a few cards in a file cabinet.
Tons of paper.
It was a big step just to get a database. I think I was 3 or 4 years in. I realized I got to have a database. It's just as crazy. So it's like,
at some point you can't remember all your customers, right?
Exactly.
I worked with a salesman that once. He was 72. This was back in 2000. I think 2000. And he swore he'd never use a computer. He actually knew every customer. It was a solder plant I worked at, and it was amazing how he was able to remember everybody's name. He knew what they ordered, and it was just.
Wow.
I mean, he had like 300 customers, and he
must have had
70,
a photographic memory.
And it was just
something.
he would sit there and he even knew the pricing to the point where he would just sit there and pretend he was looking it up on the computer.
Oh my God.
He'd put him on hold, and I'd see him go like.
That's not the norm.
Dum, dum, dum.
Yeah.
What do you make the keystroke noises?
He would just sit there with his pen go. And then he would be like, "Okay, $3 a pound.
That's so funny.
We'll ship it out next week." So, but so even in your business where you don't think necessarily computer IT innovate, it's very important to have all these skills.
Absolutely.
And in a small company, you can't, you have to rely on consultants and things like that. Yeah. So then you have to rely on word of mouth for even the quality of your consultants. I mean, even I mean,
absolutely.
I have to deal with that too, as far as, even using our payroll provider. We switched from one to ADP. So it was like, because we were recommended by the first one, but then their pricing was way too much. And then, you go to another one that gives you the same amount of service for a lot less money. So it was just, that's something that we have to deal with too as a small company. Okay, so we only have about 5 more minutes before we do our historical thing. So did I hit everything that you wanted to talk about? Or
I think so. Do you?
I do. You have it. I don't want to see.
Checking your notes?
Checking my notes, yeah.
That's all right.
Twice.
We're allowed to use notes. This isn't, the Tonight Show, as I was saying before, where the band is not going to play us off.
So you want to talk about the online training aspect as well? It doesn't have to be just in person.
Right. So we obviously have to keep our mental health professionals up to date in terms of the service they provide for us. Mm-hmm. So we provide them training, but it's almost 100% been online training for them because they're so diversely scattered around at least around the country. As well as other locations. But so we make sure they have a handbook that they know what they're supposed to do.
Representing us at a crisis site on site.
So they have to, because they have to be able to say they're responding as ResponseWorks.
Right,
correct.
Exactly. They're representing us in effect. So we're trusting them to know what to do. So we put them through a online training, where we cover the the important points as well as introduce them to the handbook. And because they might have a crisis for 6 months after we've talked to them in the training, so they have something to remind them what they're
to refresh them.
supposed to do.
So they have like a triage book. If this happens, page 2.
Well, not really, because no crisis is. Nothing is ever that straightforward when you're in a crisis.
It's not that neat and clean.
No, it's not. No.
In fact, we make sure we pick people that can handle. It's not in the book anywhere, so what do I do? So that they have to be able to be flexible and respond.
I think the training, it would be like a guideline of expectations and. You can't. It doesn't have how to handle this on page 2 because you never know what this is given in that kind of situation.
And if you don't have the handbook, you have to be able to respond anyways. So
exactly.
Yeah, but it's meant as so they know what our expectations are. They have some guidance in terms of what they should do first thing.
And they wear ID badges that say ResponseWorks. So
photo ID badges.
So when they're in
Correct.
person, they
So when there's a crisis, the people know who to reach out to.
Okay.
And who's on site to help them.
Okay. I had a question: have you ever turned down business because you go, they're either like maybe not too big to handle, but maybe more like I just don't even want to get untie their mess that they have because they don't they came to you because they have no idea what they're doing and they have this problem, that problem, this problem. I've
not turned down, but I've been a reluctant purchaser after a while. There have been a few that said, "Oh, I wish I hadn't gone down this road because it's more complex than it's worth." Sure, that's happened, but I don't think I've known enough.
You never give somebody the go away price. Like I call it the go away price. Like if what you do is you get like there's a company that we deal with that makes signs for like the drive-through. The actual metal box, and they put the TV screens inside of it, and then we protect their TV screens. And he was telling me the other day he had a customer. They only wanted 3 units. Now he deals with like large chains, 1,000-piece orders. Right. And they wanted to order 3. And they saw him at a show, so he's like, "Well, I got to quote it because they did go the effort of finding us." So he gave them the go away price. It was like 4 times the value. Than if you bought 1,000 at a time. And they're like, "Okay." And they took it. It's like, he's like, "Well, I guess I got to do it then." But then they end up being the one that expects, like, if you spend normally $10,000 for these signs and you're spending $30,000, they're expecting $30,000 worth of, "Oh, we want this in it. We want it this way. We want it this way. We want it, we want it with sparkles on it or whatever." It's like, so yeah, I just wondered if you ever ran across like that, being a small business guy, like, taking on these and you go, "Oh, we shouldn't have done," like, I don't know how I'm going to handle this. Like how do you you have to have your own internal ResponseWorks.
Right. Exactly.
Like who do you guys call if you have a problem?
Each other. We call it debriefing. So we have a very serious job, but then on the flip side, we also can step out of it and have laughter. A lot of laughter helps. Obviously not at any of the situations, but just taking ourselves out of that is super important because it is very demanding and mentally challenging. Yeah.
And there are some, people we've used to work with, prior customers who've retired or whatever that I stay in touch with, and they get what we're doing and stuff. So sometimes I'll contact one of them to debrief myself with as well.
Because it's not an everyday conversation you can have with people. Like, people ask me what I do, and sometimes I start going and they go, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "You're sorry you asked me what I did?" So it makes people uncomfortable sometimes because they're not expecting, I don't go into detail, obviously. Right. Like, I'm not telling stories, but... Or they'll start asking me questions and I'll start answering and it tanks dinner. I'm like, "No, really, it's fine. Like, ask. That's how you learn."
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that being an issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's true though with some jobs. Not as bad as yours. Like if you just start whining about your job,
you got to take care of yourself.
You got to have a group of people. Like we actually have in the HackHunterdon group, we actually have a subset of it where we'll meet for lunch, and it's just only one person per company, so you could talk about your company without worrying about stuff or whatever.
That's good.
And
that
so
kind
we
of
do.
Support, and you had a chance.
We sort of did that on our own that we started, and so we have our own mini version of that just for the employee. Because I think the employee assistant, like, I mean, I am sort of the EAP for my employees for a lot of things, and I've helped probably more than I should maybe, but legally, but I don't, it doesn't matter. I go as far as I know I'm comfortable helping with people. But I could see then, people who are doing this help, they need to be able to debrief. Like my sister
Absolutely.
does this, for a living, deals with teens and all the problems, and she has to have the gallows humor and all that stuff to deal with, and she, has to be able to unload.
It's important for us to take care of ourselves as well. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so we're going to do one more commercial break, and then we'll do the historical story. So we're running a little late, but we started late, so we're good.
Okay.
Oh, folks, you know what that music is? That's the time for modern design. This blue thing is a really new trend. A lot of the designers are trying to introduce blue as a new cabinet color. This is topical for you guys. This is really topical. And the mother said, well, I'd like her room to be gray. And the little girl said, Mom, gray is the color of depression. Hi, this is Rich Scuderi of Modern Design. We're on live every Wednesday from 2 to 3, and you're listening on WHCR DB.
You're listening to WHCR DB, HunterdonChamberRadio.com. Brought to you by the Hunterdon County Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business.
For over 50 years, Hunterdon Medical Center has been a leader in delivering comprehensive medical and health services to our community. Our staff is committed to providing the highest quality of care to our patients. If you need a physician, we can refer you to over 300 of the best. Call Hunterdon Medical Center's Physician Referral Service at 1-800-511-4HMC or visit us on the web at www.hunterdonhealthcare.org. When it matters most, our award-winning team of emergency physicians and nurses provides sophisticated care 24 hours a day. Superior emergency care at a moment's notice. Hunterdon Healthcare, your full circle of care.
All right, we're back here. Jim and Nadia with HackHunterdon Radio, and we got Dan and Jennifer from ResponseWorks. We're finishing up the show. So before I do the historical thing, Jennifer reminded me to talk to you about the next HackHunterdon meetup. It's normally we do it the last Thursday of the month, but this month, the last Thursday of the month is Halloween.
That's right.
So we moved it up a week to October 24th. It's at the Lone Eagle Brewing Company, the brewery down here in Flemington, right by the circle. We meet at 7 o'clock in the evening and just go upstairs to the loft, and the first beer is free.
Nice.
It's paid for by the chamber, and the county, I guess, gets involved in this too somehow. And then the speaker this month is going to be, hopefully, we're about 99% confirmed it's going to be somebody from the FBI. So it'd be a pretty cool thing. I just didn't have the who it is or what exactly they're going to talk about. Hopefully something related to cybersecurity or computer crime, because we had some lady that came previous meeting and offered a speaker. So we're working on getting that out, and we'll post that on our Facebook page and the Meetup app when we get that confirmed. So hopefully tomorrow we'll get all that confirmed. So there's that, and then I guess that's that. Okay, so all right. So the history. So we talked about the history of EAP. So it starts off with alcoholism. So in this country, alcohol obviously is a big part of the founding fathers. They were brewmasters, all that stuff,
Right.
as Sam Adams keeps telling us, right, through their
right.
advertising. And so it wasn't a really big issue until the 1830s, 1840s, when we had the Industrial Revolution. And so you can't just go to work drunk with a sawmill, blade going back and forth here. So, and also at the same time, the temperance movement started, where people were recognizing that alcoholism is an issue, and there was a big backlash. So the first in-home program was founded by a person named Robert Law in Chicago. It's called the Chicago Washingtonian Home. It was in 1863, and it was an experiment where he said, I'm going to take my alcoholic employee home to live with me as a way of sobering him up. And it worked, and so they put 2 more, and then that worked, and then it grew into a whole new medical field, basically. and it still exists today. I looked them up. They're still part of some larger, University of Chicago health organization. And so as this was going on through the late 1800s, and then we got to like World War II, big companies started doing more alcoholics awareness programs, alcoholism, like Eastman Kodak, Kennecott Copper Company was mentioned, and Alice Chalmers. And then these were formalized into an industrial alcoholism program by Yale Center for Alcohol Studies and the National Committee on Education on Alcoholism. And so the Yale plan, there's like a whole 9-step plan, which I won't get into. And then that led us into, the 60s, 70s, where people are starting to recognize mental health as well as alcoholism. It's starting to all relate. And there was I missed that paper. Where's that? The Hughes Act, right? So the Hughes Act was enacted in 1970, created the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, and they were the ones that coined the term EAP, Employment Assistance Program. And they were the ones that started saying, okay, you need to have an MSW and you have to have training. And they said by 1980, 80% of all Fortune 500 companies had an EAP.
Yeah.
So within 10 years, it grew that fast. And then from there, it's just grown to, like we just mentioned today, the helping with disasters, helping with your family issues, helping with, grandparents, even things like that. So that's the history of EAP, and that's where we're at today. So let me get to my... Do you want to add anything? Did I miss anything before?
Nope.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay, good. All right, so, I guess we're at time to end the show. So thank you to Dan and Jennifer for being my guests.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you to all the new fans who watch on Facebook and YouTube. I'll tell you guys later where you can find it. Thanks to Chamber for giving me the opportunity and the platform. Thanks to Mark and his team at Economic Development for their encouragement and support. And they gave me an award actually Friday.
Congratulations.
It was
Nice.
or for Zero Cert for helping with all the work that I do with economic development. I do more on that side of the table than the Chamber, but we do both. So that was nice. He surprised me with the award. He told the other companies he was giving awards to because they all had speeches ready. I didn't have any. I even asked him, "Do you need me to speak at this summit thing?" And he's like, "No, you don't have to say anything. Just sit there." And I'm like, "All right."
He could extemporize.
So he just so that was a interesting surprise. Thanks to the gang back at Zero Surge, Donna, Deb, Jenny, Tony, Dave, and John. Thanks to my wife and kids, and to all the rest of you innovators out there. The original meaning of innovator was that you were a rebel. So keep rebelling against the doubters and make your ideas a reality. And that's the show.